Hello there. We have a problem with people clinging to power for too long, to the point where they are only ever forced to let go when they are no longer coherent enough to do anything about it. And this is just the latest example in a long string of such examples from the US specifically, but honestly, the rest of the world might not be that far behind. Politicians' ages have been ever increasing. And I think that is, at least in large part, due to the fact that we simply don't have term limits. Oh, another reason is that as it becomes ever more difficult to get started in the economy, with purchasing power decreasing, inflation on the rise, and so on, you have a much longer climb to the top for young people. And so older people stay in power for longer. They can maintain their positions. They don't have the threat of competition from the next generation for a longer period of time. And so you get older people staying in power essentially perpetually at this point. So just so that you understand the hilariously exaggerated nature of the problem right now, a still-sitting Texas Congresswoman has been missing votes in Washington because she's been living in a $4,000 a month nursing home for the past 6 months. So she didn't vote for 6 months and nobody thought to do anything about it. Nobody even noticed that she was gone. Nobody knew where she was. Kay Granger, 81, who was set to wind up a nearly 30-year career in the House in January, hasn't visited her office for the past 6 months. Carlos Turico, a reporter for a local outlet, started to do some research by contacting her offices, which never once responded to calls going directly to voicemail. Granger's constituency office was also a complete ghost town upon a visit, with no signs of anyone working there. Eventually, one of Granger's constituents suggested to the Dallas Express that the Congresswoman was living in an assisted living facility. She was reportedly living at a care home that specializes in memory loss after she'd been found wandering lost and confused in her district. A visit to the Tradition Clear Fork in Fort Worth resulted in 2 employees confirming that Granger lives there. Now, this is her home, said Taylor Manziel, the Tradition Clear Fork's assistant executive director. With a month remaining in her term and important votes still taking place in Washington daily, local officials are furious to discover her absence. The lack of representation for CD12 is troubling to say the least, said Tarrant County GOP Chair Beau French. At a time when extraordinarily important votes are happening, including debt ceiling, distress relief, farm bills, and border issues, Kay Granger is nowhere to be found. The margin in Congress is razor thin, and the lack of a Republican vote representing CD12 disenfranchises 2 million people. We deserve better. The fact that Kay Granger is unable to leave her nursing home to participate in the most important congressional vote of the year suggests she was already in visible decline when she ran for re-election in 2022, said Rolando Garcia, a Republican committee in the district. I think that's enough. So, this is what's going on, and this is not specific to her. We have others in cognitive decline. We also had a specific member of Congress, I believe he was, that just had, was it an aneurysm or a heart attack? Fetterman. And he was still elected despite the fact that he basically couldn't talk, couldn't understand or express himself properly, and I don't even know if he could think properly. Anyway, this is a different article about the same thing, but it highlights the core issue here. Says age became a political issue in 2024 as in no other election cycle in the modern era of American politics, touching on former Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the late California Representative Dianne Feinstein, President Joe Biden, President-elect Donald Trump, and other aging leaders. I'm going to point out that the left tried to tar Trump with the same brush as Biden. It didn't really work because the man clearly still has plenty of energy. He's not mumbling, not incoherent, and can actually finish his sentences, speaking just on the spot, not needing a teleprompter, which is everything Biden can't do. I would point out that Kamala can't seem to do that either, considering she stopped speaking and repeated herself once her teleprompter was stuck. So it might not just be age, it might be low mental capacity. Regardless, the point stands. We currently have an epidemic of people in power who are empty suits, and nobody notices when they break down mentally because it was never their thinking that got them there in the first place. They are actors putting on a show for the true people in charge. Who are those? Well, ask the lobbyists. That's my answer. Now, this happens because we have no term limits, and so the power of inertia can basically propel someone to keep staying in office forever, essentially until they're gone, either completely gone or just in the head. Obviously, term limits would be a good way to stop this. If you need to be re-elected once and that's it, the chances that, somebody, 85 is perfectly coherent and popular enough to get elected, and then at 89 he stands for re-election and nobody notices the decline, I don't think that's very likely. On the other hand, if you have this sleepy way of voting, where basically the same person is in office for 30 years, people are just used to them being in office. And so they don't even think about it. They'll vote for the same person. They might even have done a good job so far, and eventually they just get into mental cognitive decline, and, well, people vote for them anyway. So, this is not the case with one candidate, and that's Joe Biden. Joe Biden was already in cognitive decline when he first ran against Trump. He first ran for the office of president many years before. Incidentally, he dropped out after it was discovered that he, I believe, lied about his academic qualifications and also plagiarized the speeches of other notable political persons. Regardless, this was the first time that he ran against Trump in 2016. He was clearly in mental cognitive decline. The Democrats didn't care, they pushed him anyway. Now, why did that happen? In my opinion, because this was an extraordinary case of not just wanting an empty suit who'll do what the lobbyists say, but that he is completely an empty suit that does what another person who does what the lobbyists say. So that person is Barack Obama. This, for those who don't know, this is Snopes, a left-wing fact-checking website. And they essentially are fact-checking the claim that Obama said that he would love to be president for a third term if somebody else took the spotlight. And here is the quote from the transcript from Snopes. Obama, quote, "I said this before, people would ask me, knowing what you know now, do you wish you had a third term? And I used to say, you know what, if I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a frontman or frontwoman, and they had an earpiece in, and I was just in my basement, in my sweats, looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and ceremony, I'd be fine with that, because I found the work fascinating. I mean, I write about the, even on my worst days, I found puzzling out, these big, complicated, difficult issues, especially if you are working with some great people, to be professionally really satisfying. But I do not miss having to wear a tie every day. So, this is a remark appeared on a video on the official YouTube channel for the Late Show with Stephen Colbert. They claimed that this was humorous and that it was a joke. I don't think so, because you could see videos of Biden and Obama in all sorts of high-end, hobnobbing occasions, dinners and such. And basically, Biden, which is supposed to be your American president, leader of the free world, most powerful man in the world, just standing there looking lost. Everybody ignores him. Meanwhile, Barack Obama is absolutely surrounded by people clamoring to talk to him, despite the fact that he has no official position whatsoever. And so people reached the logical conclusion that Barack Obama is in power and Biden is essentially an empty suit. Now, you might have some other explanation that I can't think of at the time. I'd love to hear it in the comments if you do. But this is, in my opinion, my personal take, what a normal person would assume, seeing that view presented repeatedly in all of these meetings. So I don't think that Joe Biden is a normal case for a politician in mental decline. I think this was specifically for Obama. Essentially to be a stand-in, right? This is essentially Obama's third term through Joe Biden in cognitive decline as a stand-in. On the other hand, I think that these Congress people that serve 30 years and eventually reach cognitive decline and continue on, that's a different issue. Essentially, the power of inertia carried them, just term limits is enough. In my opinion, if you want to stop people like Featherman and Joe Biden from getting into office, despite the fact that they are in cognitive decline, what you need to do is have a less biased echo chamber of political system where essentially only one side is heard. And the same is for social media, incidentally, not just the mainstream media. Before Elon Musk bought Twitter, we only ever heard one side of the argument to an extent, meaning that the right has to mince words, the right has to censor. It's very, very tilted towards the left on social media, apart from X. If you look at the actual views of the people using platforms, you can see that on X, it's about half and half for Republicans and Democrats. Very equal. On the other hand, if you look at other platforms, then the left has a majority. I believe perhaps YouTube is slightly different, not because they don't censor Republicans, but Republicans dominate it anyway because Republicans dominate long form content, as far as I remember. Regardless, what I can tell you is that if you have no ability for the opposition to criticize the majority, then they can get through anything, including people clearly incapable of thinking and formulating a sentence, which should be egregious. It should be over the line, but it's not. It hasn't been so far in the last couple of years, at least. We didn't used to have that when I was younger. I started looking into politics at like 15 or something, and back then we didn't have people this obviously being puppets. Everybody knew that, yes, the politicians take all sorts of gifts and favors from rich and influential people, and then they create policy that favors them. It was, the normal, let's say, slightly cynical worldview. There's a difference between that and what we're seeing right now. When you have the people in power literally having no power whatsoever, the people nominally in power, let's say. In short, if you as a citizen have one power to affect your leader, essentially to hold them to account, and that is to replace them, but the leader in fact doesn't matter at all, it's just an empty suit, and no matter what you choose, you get the same thing anyway, then you have no power whatsoever. You are not living in a democracy anymore. That's my personal view on it. And I think this is what happened in Britain last election. You had essentially such a low turnout that I believe that the Labour Party had like 20% of the total vote, 30% like of the people who voted or something, and despite that, they have about 60% in parliament. It's just ridiculous. What you have essentially is people disengaged. They voted for the right in historical fashion. Previous election, the right did everything in the opposite of what was promised. They essentially implemented Labour policies, and so the right-wing voters and moderate voters that decided that the left went too far basically gave up. This is a farce to them. They no longer believe in the power of democracy. They no longer believe in the power of the vote. Essentially, they just see empty suits held by somebody else, and it doesn't matter that they can replace the empty suit with another empty suit. And in fact, they can't even keep their empty suit. Literally, the empty suit they chose was Boris Johnson, which was kicked out because he wasn't malleable enough, even though he did a lot of what the people in power wanted against the promises to the public, but he wasn't empty suit enough. So they kicked him out and then held an election, tried to get in a new puppet. A new puppet, again, wasn't puppety enough, wasn't enough an NPC, didn't sell her soul enough. So they kicked her too, and then they literally eschewed elections and put in a, general manager wancing around and pretending to be the elected representative in the form of Rishi Sunak. And of course, Rishi Sunak was kicked out by the electorate, but the same policies are only in overdrive, even faster, from our good friend Keir Starmer, or as he's known in Britain, two-tier Keir, for his propensity of enforcing the law in a two-tier fashion, with second-rate citizens being the natives, of course. Now, having said all of that, can we actually get through the amendment to have term limits? can we actually get through the reconstruction of Section 230 in order to force social media in order to stop censoring, essentially to stop being a publisher and to start being a free playground for all legal opinions? Well, I don't think so about the term limits. In my opinion, almost nobody would vote for it, even if they are well-meaning, because essentially they would be hurting themselves. On the other hand, reforming Section 230 might be possible. Maybe. I think it's questionable because some of the Republicans are essentially snakes and rhinos, but I think by this point a lot of them are populists who will actually vote for something like that. So it might be possible that we get enough influence to change that, and I think that would create a sweeping reform in terms of just how bad politicians can be, what they can get away with. And maybe being in cognitive decline will no longer be listed among the things that they can. That's the hope anyway. Thanks for watching, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.